Welcome to Ontario Cold Cases, the podcast, brought to you by Nickel Investigations, the podcast that delves deep into the unsolved mysteries that haunt our province. I'm Jay Nickel, a private investigator with Nickel Investigations, and your host and guide in this journey through the chilling tales that left investigators baffled and communities in search of answers. In each episode, we'll unearth the forgotten stories of Ontario's cold cases, exploring the details, the evidence, and the individuals involved with the eye of a private investigator who specializes in cold case investigations. From the mysterious disappearances to the perplexing murders, our mission is to shine a light in these cases and hopefully bring justice to those who have long awaited closure. But we can't do it alone. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of these enigmatic cases. We'll speak with experts, law enforcement officials, and sometimes even the families of the victims, all in the pursuit of truth. So buckle up and prepare to dive headfirst into the world of unresolved mysteries. Together we'll keep the flame of hope burning for justice, one episode at a time. Thank you for tuning in to the Ontario Cold Cases, the podcast. Let's begin our quest for answers. Hello, I'm Jay Nickel from Nickel Investigations, and welcome to our next episode of Ontario Cold Cases, the podcast. Season 1, Episode 13, The Murder of Debbie Silverman. At about 5 a.m. on Saturday, August 12, 1978, 21-year-old Debbie Silverman was abducted in the hallway of her apartment building of 4854 Bathurst Street, near Finch Avenue West in Toronto. She'd just come home from a night out with friends and was entering her apartment building when the abductor struck. Some of her belongings were found strewn in the hallway. Silverman's body was found on November 12, 1978 in a shallow grave near Sunderland, Ontario, about 80 kilometers northeast of Toronto. Debbie Silverman was a beautiful, outgoing, vivacious, and eager to grab onto everything life had to offer. She had a good job, lots of friends, and a nearly new maroon Chrysler Cordoba car. She got in debt to buy the car but felt it was worth every penny. Life was good. Debbie looked forward to a future that was full of promise and hope, and then she was gone. On Sunday, November 12, 1978, her body was found on a lot in a farm at an intersection of Highway 7 at Durham Regional Road 13, the Brock Township, about 42 miles east of where she was last seen. Debbie Silverman attended grade 10 at the Hebrew School in Bathurst Street, but had switched to Northview Secondary School for grade 11. After taking a year off to work at the Papaya Hut on Yonge Street in downtown Toronto, she returned to Northview Secondary School and graduated with a grade 12 diploma in 1977. She worked for a short period of time at Travelways Bus Company, Fran's Restaurant in Yonge Street, the Papaya Hut in Yonge Street, and at the Zoom Rhine Restaurant in Ontario Place. At the time of her death, she was employed at Thorncrest Ford at 4865 Dundas Street West in Islington. Debbie loved expensive clothes and collected exotic perfumes. She loved being wined and dined and being treated like a lady. She loved disco dancing, dating without getting involved in swimming at Wasaga Beach. Debbie was a serious young woman who thought deeply about life and often preferred a stroll through the zoo or dinner with her mom to a night on the town. At 19, Debbie suffered her first big crisis in life. Her fiancé died of cancer, and she'd not been serious about anyone since then. The Silvermans were a close family. Debbie's mother, Carol, worked in a restaurant to keep her family together. Debbie's sister, Karen, who was 19 at the time, and her brother, David, 18, since she separated from her husband 3 years prior to Debbie's disappearance. Debbie's sister-in-law, Robin, was also close. Last time her mother, Carol, saw her daughter was early that Friday morning. It was unusual for them to meet then because normally Mrs. Silverman's late-night job meant she'd be sleeping when Debbie left for work. But I had some problems at the restaurant and I just couldn't sleep at all. So I got up at 9 and made a cup of coffee. Debbie came in and sat down. She told her mother, "I wanted to come talk to you at work last night, but I didn't want to bother you." That morning, though, Debbie didn't have much time to talk. "I've got to run," she said, and took off. Her mother never saw her alive again. This episode is brought to you by Nickel Investigations. The investigation. Debbie Silverman lived with her mother at 4854 Bathurst Street in Toronto. On the evening of Friday, August 11th, 1978, Debbie went on a double date in downtown Toronto with friends from work. Returned to one of the friends' homes at approximately 2 a.m. Between 4 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. on Saturday, August 12th, she left that residence alone and headed home in her car. Arriving at her apartment building, police believe at approximately 5 a.m. She parked her vehicle in the apartment lot and entered the building through a side entrance that opened into a narrow hallway leading to the main lobby. Her purse containing credit cards, wallet, makeup, keys, and her lace-trimmed underwear and a broken gold necklace were found inside the back door. Neighbors in the apartment building told police they heard screams at about 4 a.m., but did not call police because they said it wasn't unusual for that area. It later turned out it was just guests at a party hollering. Police surmised that Debbie probably put her key in the side door and then back into her white vinyl purse when she opened the door. Probably someone grabbed her from behind. Pieces of her gold necklace with a Star of David on it and pieces of her hair clinging to it were found later, lying outside on the pavement. Unbelievably, tragically though, the police knew none of this until 15 hours after it had occurred. Within an hour after Debbie was probably attacked and abducted, the tenant saw her things lying on the floor. Instead of reporting it, he took everything into his apartment, looked through it, stole the gold jewelry, and then left the purse with the underwear neatly folded inside it outside the Silverman's apartment door. Police didn't track him down until a door-to-door search led them to his apartment at 9 p.m. Debbie's sister Karen found the purse when she went out to get the newspaper at 11 a.m. Debbie was 5 foot 4 inches tall, weighed 120 pounds, and had long dark hair. Toronto police conducted an extensive investigation into her abduction. Buildings were searched, neighbors canvassed, and reservoirs dredged. Every tip was considered vital and followed up. Police believe Debbie may have been followed home by someone from a bar. On Sunday, November 12, 1978, her body was found on a lot in a farm by a teenage boy walking through the bush at an intersection of Highway 7 at Durham Regional Road 13 in Brock Township, about 42 miles east of where she was last seen. When her body was discovered north of Toronto, the investigation into the abduction of Debbie Silverman quickly turned into a hunt for her killer. Because her body was found in the jurisdiction of the Ontario Provincial Police, the OPP took the lead with the assistance of neighboring police forces. Police believe Debbie was driven to the Sunderland area north of Whitby by her abductor or abductors before she was killed and buried. Wild animals apparently uncovered part of the body. There are no houses near Concession 3 and Highway 7 and 12. There is dense bush coming right up to the road. The land is swampy. Shoulder of the road is very narrow on the side she was left. It would have been very suspicious to see a vehicle parked there at any time. There was one small level opening, though, where someone used to keep bees. One cannot see the hive area from the road. You would have to know it's there. Her hands were tied behind her back with the sleeves of her blue and white shirt, and her black halter top was around her neck. She'd been shot to death. Her brassiere was still on, but she had no shoes or underwear on. Her underwear were found in the hallway of her building. Efforts were redoubled, but to this day her death remains a mystery. The OPP, like her family, has no intention of forgetting Debbie or of resting until the person or persons who ended her life are brought to justice. Modern technology and new leads hold the promise that that may yet happen. The suspects. Clifford Olson. Clifford Olson was a middle-aged habitual criminal and informant when from January 1980 until August 1981, he stalked, tortured, and killed at least 11 youngsters in British Columbia's lower mainland. He sexually abused scores of others. Convicted serial killer Clifford Olson informed various people on his knowledge of Debbie Silverman's murder. He notified then Premier William Davis of Ontario by letter, Robert Ray, MPP of the NDP Party of Ontario by letter, dated May 9, 1983, and David Peterson, MPP, Liberal Leader of Ontario by letter, dated May 4, 1983. On August 9, 1982, Olson swore an affidavit with photos taken at the murder farm grave, along with photos of Silverman being buried. The following years, up to 1988, several police officers interviewed Olson in Kingston Penitentiary in the Silverman case. On January 9, 1987, a letter to the Honourable Ian Scott, Attorney General of Ontario, Olson requested immunity from prosecution for the murder of Debbie Silverman. Olson says he was present and can name the killer and give photos. On December 9, 1987, two detectives interviewed Olson regarding the letter he sent to Ian Scott and informed him there would be no deal. Olson now refuses to talk to any of them. In 1988, Olson requested access to personal information in the Ontario Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act 1987. Olson accessed 4 separate departments obtaining all the information held on him. Access was also granted to all departments with regards to all information held on Deborah Silverman. Olson will not identify the killer of Debbie Silverman because there is no deal which will benefit him. The heinous nature of his crimes ensured infamy, but more than that, Olson was reviled because he blackmailed authorities into paying his family $100,000 for the return of his victims' remains. A macabre cash for corpses deal that destroyed careers and tormented survivors. A serial killer. Debbie Silverman and Alison Thomas both vanished 1 month apart in 1978. Police believe it may be in the work of a serial killer. Just over a month after Debbie disappeared, 26-year-old Alison Thomas went to a dinner party in a home in the Yonge and Eglinton area. She left by herself later that night on September 28, 1978, telling friends she was going to walk to a taxi stand on Yonge Street and take a cab home. It was the last time anyone ever saw or heard from her again. Could there be a connection to another girl? On September 1st, 1983, a Toronto sex trade worker named Claire Samson, 23, was last seen getting into a large beige-colored car in front of the Essex Hotel on Jarvis Street in Toronto, near Allen Gardens. Following day, the woman's body was found in a wooded area near Oral Side Road, 2021, off Highway 93 near Barrie. She, too, was transported away from where she was last seen. Shot and found near beehives, exactly the same as Debbie Silverman. Darryl Gerald Dollan and his girlfriend, Daryle Newstead. On the very same day that Debbie's body would be identified, police issued a photo of 2 wanted fugitives. Warrants were issued for Darryl Gerald Dollan, 28, and his girlfriend, Daryle Newstead, 25, on charges of robbery and abduction. Neither had a fixed address. They were wanted since Monday, November 12, 1978, when a man armed with a sawed-off shotgun and a woman began an erratic series of abductions, forcing 3 different motorists to accompany them on aimless car rides to and from Toronto, Mississauga, and Nobleton. They were also suspected of an apparent robbery attempt when they were pushed out of a house after the man pulled a shotgun on Citation Drive in North York, about a 10-minute drive away from where Debbie was abducted from. They also tried to get into a house on Flaremore Crescent around the corner, but the occupants refused to open the door. The lawyer's accusation. During the trial, Robert Stewart, who was found guilty on August 14, 1979, of criminal negligence causing death in the hit-and-run death of dancer Judy Jordan, defense attorney Malcolm Robb suggested that Mrs. Jordan's death was not an accident at all and raised the idea that she'd been involved in a drug ring along with Debbie Silverman. Robb told the court that he had reason to believe that Mrs. Jordan's husband, Charles, was also involved in drugs, and during questioning he asked a police officer if he knew anything about the relationship between husband and wife. He implied that Mrs. Jordan had been pushed in front of Stewart's car by someone who wanted to get rid of her. His line of questioning seemed to raise the possibility of their husband being involved. Nothing came of Robb's line of questioning. Robb didn't have to prove any of his allegations as long as he had something, no matter how tenuous, to back up his questions. He was perfectly within his rights to raise them. Up next, my theory and some notes. This episode is brought to you by Nickel Investigations. It's certainly possible that Clifford Olson was involved, but I feel it was just another excuse for Olson to try to extort more money from the justice system by his claiming to know the killer of Debbie. The two Daryls are a stronger possibility. Certainly in the case of Debbie, it seems likely two people would have to be involved in her abduction, one to control her and one to drive the vehicle. They were also operating in the area of the abduction of Debbie. Further investigation of what happened to the two Darryls is required, though I get the impression they were more interested in robbery and did not kill any of the people they abducted. I don't think they were involved in the murder of Debbie. The lawyer's accusation should not be considered at all, and it seems the police never did. Less says about that nonsense that he spewed, the better. That leaves us with the likely serial killer theory. Again, the police seem to believe the abduction and murder of Debbie Silverman and the disappearance of Alison Thomas were connected. Same area and a late night abduction with no witnesses. Could the murderer have moved on to the murder of prostitutes? Could they have been responsible for earlier murders? Most studies do indicate serial killers don't stop until they are killed or captured. Is this one who got away, or were they convicted on something else? In the cases of Debbie Silverman, Alison Thomas, and possibly Claire Samson, were never connected with the murderer. From some articles, it appears that no physical evidence was kept, and there is no DNA sample. It has not been confirmed, though. Sometimes I think one of the guys she was with might be involved, but I don't think they'd be able to confuse the cops all these years considering they were heavily suspected. I think it was someone who lived there. They were going out and she was coming in, likely watched for her car. Her sister didn't find the person until 11 a.m. outside their door. Who knows when police got to the building to ask around, but being a Saturday in the summer and clearly late morning at best, people would have a built-in excuse if they weren't home when police knocked. But I'd sure like to see a list of doors they knocked on and who was home and who wasn't. I think the key is in there. I would sure like to see if anybody else police interview crossed over to Alison Thomas. Were they living in the building, work, friends, anything? I'd like to find out where each person that were in the same building with Debbie with access to a vehicle lived or grew up or worked. Someone knew that spot in Sunderland, just like Christine Jessup's killer knew the area as well. Notes on Debbie Silverman case. With files from the Toronto Star from September 17, 1978. The morning she disappeared, she told her mother, "I wanted to come talk to you at work last night, but I didn't want to bother you." What did she want to talk about? The day of her disappearance, she went out for lunch with 3 other employees, 2 men and a woman, made plans to go dancing on a double date. Both men were under suspicion of murder. Both said they were brought in for questioning countless times and that they've been followed by police. Gina Jorgensen was Debbie's closest friend. Debbie's date that night was a red-headed car mechanic. He admitted to Jorgensen he had a crush on Debbie, even though it was their first date. They tried to get into Fridays in Eglinton, but then walked around the corner to Camelot Steakhouse and Tavern and went to the disco in the back. We stayed at the place till it closed, then we drove to Mississauga, was what Debbie's date had said. I drove her car. They dropped off Pam, the other girl, and then the 2 men and Debbie went to Pam's date's house on Arbor Road, Mississauga. His parents were not home. That could be quite a distance, depending on where Pam lived. While the other guy played pool downstairs, I sat and talked to Debbie from about 2:30 to 4:30, her friend said. She was so tired that I asked her about 10 times to stay the night. Instead, it appears that Debbie insisted on leaving. Mrs. Silverman says she could always hear when Debbie came home because no matter what time it was, she would pull into the parking lot past her mother's bedroom window, their car windows open and the stereo radio blaring. But her mother did not hear her arrive. Note, was her mother just too tired and missed it? Seems to me her mother was just too tired and missed hearing her car drive in. Did Debbie just have the radio turned down or did someone else drive her car? Debbie's always parked her car off by itself on an angle in the corner of the outdoor parking lot beside her apartment building. It was the furthest spot from the door, but it was the only way she could be sure her beloved car would be out of scratching range. It seems she locked her car in its usual spot about 5 a.m. Saturday morning and walked 80 paces to the side door. A row of bright spotlights illuminates the entire length of the building, but just next to the chipped yellow entrance there's a deep, wide indentation. Now, was her car parked at the usual angle as they say? Now, the article doesn't exactly say, but it does sound like it was where it usually would be. Now, those lights would probably have lit up a car following her in, as would the headlights, unless Debbie just wasn't paying attention, or the car had shut off their headlights. Very possible. More likely the person was already there, parked near the entrance with their lights off and the car shut off. Still, the likelihood is that it was two people. It'd be easier to control a person, especially to drive the distance they seem to have done, if you think they went straight to Sunderland and she was killed that day. One person to drive and one to control Debbie. Possibly one person was already inside, and when the person who was outside grabbed Debbie, when she opened the door, the other person grabbed her, and they carried her immediately to the car. Others believe Debbie's assailant was someone she knew. Debbie's friend Gina Jorgensen says Debbie was so attractive that she had many men interested in her. At the time of the article, police were looking for a strange man named John in his mid-20s who used to hang around Debbie, telling her lies about what a wonderful job he had, what a wonderful life he would give her if she would marry him. Now, how closely were people at the party looked at? Could Debbie have seen something she shouldn't have, or was it someone who saw an opportunity? Did someone leave suddenly, or was already leaving when Debbie came into the building? I do get the impression her panties found in the hallway were a result of her having sex prior to getting home, likely with someone in the house she just left. I don't see that person following her home. It's possible someone did see her leave the house and followed her and confronted her there. The other possibility is someone living in the building or living nearby saw her come home. Could Debbie and the man she was talking to upstairs from 2:30 to 4:30 a.m. have been doing more than just talking? If so, and if the man she was talking to was not her date, the red-headed mechanic, and if her date was in the basement and knew and or could hear what was going on upstairs, you might have had a very jealous, humiliated, and rage-filled mechanic on your hands. Maybe that's one of the reasons why police consider both men suspects at one time. They all went in Debbie's car to the venue, and she drove people home. How were they meeting Debbie in the first place? Did they leave their cars at work and go with her directly from work? Or did they go home and get ready first and then meet later? Did someone leave their car at Debbie's building to collect later? Did she meet them along the route somewhere to pick them up? Did she have them meet her at her place? How did the other three usually get to and from work, social events, and how did Debbie end up driving everyone? Google tells us the sun rose on August 12, 1978 at 6:12 a.m. It's roughly an hour drive from her building to where she was eventually found. If she was at the man's house talking until about 4:30 a.m., now if she went home and was there by 5 to 5:30 a.m., she's not even arriving in the final spot in Sunderland until sometime around 6 a.m., and that's if they went directly there and killed and dumped her there. I'd love to ask police about the scene of the body. Were there any signs of a struggle there? Was it too badly damaged? Any sign that the killer lingered there? Do they think she was killed where she was found? You have two young men in a house with a woman. His parents aren't home. Is anyone else home? Is the other man playing pool by himself for 2 hours? This strikes me as very strange. I don't think I'd buy that one played pool and the other talked to Debbie for 2 whole hours. Something is just not right there. Up next, the mother's only hope for peace is to find out what happened. Mother's only hope for peace is to find out what happened. Debbie Silverman's body lies today in a well-tended grave beneath a lovingly inscribed headstone on the manicured lawns of Bathurst Lawn Memorial Park close to her home and family. In a long way in time and place from the hastily covered, shallow plot where her remains lay hidden for 3 months in deserted woods near Sunderland. While she is finally laid to rest, her case is not. And her mother Carol says her only hope for peace of mind now is to find out what happened to her slain daughter. Why did it have to happen to Debbie, said one friend. She loved life. She was full of fun and very outgoing. It just doesn't make any sense. There were no flowers, and the occasion was filled with emotion rather than pomp and ostentation. It was how Debbie would have wanted it. Thank you for listening, and please consider subscribing on Patreon, Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts to listen to Ontario Cold Case, the podcast.